Get her out of my cabin. She doesn't look like a first-class passenger. The voice didn't shake. It struck. Captain Evelyn Reed delivered the sentence like a verdict, not a mistake. She stood just feet away from seat to A, blocking the aisle with her body and her bias. In front of her stood a black woman in jeans and a plain black t-shirt, boarding pass in hand, expression calm. Evelyn didn't blink. She simply folded her arms and waited for the woman to be removed. What Evelyn didn't know, what she hadn't even bothered to check, was that the woman she was dismissing as an intruder wasn't just a passenger. She was the owner of the entire jet. Before we go deeper into this story, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, because this isn't just about one flight. It's about what happens when quiet power meets open bias and refuses to back down. This story could take place anywhere, and when it does, the person in the "I might just be someone like you" at 10 a.m. on May 29th, Zara Khalid boarded her own Gulfstream G650 at a private terminal in Chicago. The terminal was polished and silent, the air crisp with the sterile luxury of corporate aviation. Zara wore no makeup, no jewelry, no badge. She didn't want recognition. She wanted truth. She had designed this entire trip as a covert test. Her billion-dollar company, Starcrest Ventures, had recently acquired the charter firm running this very jet. Reports of discrimination had reached her desk. Nothing confirmed, just patterns, language, choices, and tonight, she was going to see them, up close. The second she stepped into the cabin, Evelyn moved. The captain wasn't in the cockpit where she belonged. She was on patrol. Her eyes scanned the boarding line and landed on Zara like a target. Evelyn approached, her mouth set, and held out a hand. "Proof of premium status," she said. "No greeting. No welcome." Zara handed over the boarding pass, a fully valid one generated internally for this operation. Evelyn looked at it like it was counterfeit, then tossed it aside. "You're not on the verified list," she snapped. "You need to leave the cabin." "I'm seated into A," Zara said evenly. "It's right here." Evelyn stepped closer. "Not anymore." Before Zara could respond, a man across the aisle stood up. White, mid-40s, dark blazer, sharp watch. Martin Shaw. He reached over Zara's arm, grabbed her black leather briefcase from the seat beside her, and dropped it roughly by her feet. "Don't clutter first class," he muttered. "This isn't the subway." He sat down into bites and didn't look back. His fake VIP badge flashed under the light as he settled into the seat with the confidence of someone used to being believed. Evelyn crossed her arms tighter. "We don't have time for confusion. Please exit until we can verify your status." Zara raised her phone. "Nina," she said quietly, "start protocol 6. On the other end of the line, Nina Chen's voice came through clearly. "Ready and waiting, ma'am." Leah Grant, 26, sat diagonally across from them, a freelance journalist who had spent enough time in airports to know what this was. She leaned toward her seatmate. "She didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. "They're just assuming." Martin scoffed. "It's called private aviation. There are standards." Zara turned to face him. "Say that again." He smirked. "Try economy. That's more your level." He tore a small sheet from his notebook, scribbled something, and flicked it toward her tray table. The note said, "Try economy." Leah caught sight of it and repeated the words aloud. "Seriously," she said. Zara picked up the note, folded it cleanly, slid it into the seat pocket in front of her. Evelyn's voice rang out. "You're holding up the flight. This isn't some charity." Zara didn't move. "You'll want to take that tone back," she said. "Because in a few minutes, the person you're trying to remove will become the one removing you." Evelyn tilted her head and laughed. "Is that a threat?" "No," Zara said. "It's a timeline." Fiona Bell, the flight attendant, peeked out from the galley and added, "She's not verified. I checked." No one had seen her check anything. "Nina," Zara said into the phone. "Log every word from this point forward." "Already logging." Nina replied. Passengers were beginning to stir, not loudly, just that quiet ripple of tension when the truth starts to reach the edges of the room. Evelyn barked, "You're not scanned, not listed, not cleared. This is your last warning." Zara nodded. Then let the record show you were warned to. Martin rolled his eyes and sank back into his seat. You people always have to make it a scene. Leah stood up. No, you're making it a scene. She's just standing there. Zara turned to her. Thank you. Leah nodded. I saw everything. So did everyone else. Evelyn turned back toward the cockpit. Get her out of here, she said, not even addressing anyone specific. Just a command, just a dismissal. Zara stayed put. She looked at Evelyn with the kind of patience that makes tyrants nervous, the kind of calm that doesn't come from being afraid, but from knowing exactly how the next 30 minutes are going to unfold. Silence settled again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full, with pressure, with judgment, with people realizing they were about to witness something they'd remember for the rest of their lives. And while Evelyn smiled, certain she was still in control, and Martin tapped his phone with smug satisfaction, Zara waited, not for permission, not for justice, for timing, because she already had the power, and in 29 minutes, she'd use it. Security has been notified, Evelyn said, loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. Unverified boarding, possible breach. Her voice was crisp, clinical, and completely confident, like she was announcing turbulence, not targeting a black woman, in plain clothing. But what made the sentence cut deeper wasn't the volume. It was the way she said possible breach while staring Zara down, as if her presence alone was the violation. Zara didn't move. She stood at C to A with her phone to her ear, listening to Nina's calm voice feed in quietly. I've escalated to Protocol 6B, Nina said. Confirm tracking. Evelyn's now made 3 public claims of invalid access. Zara responded just as calmly. Continue logging. No interruption. Across the aisle. Martin Shaw leaned sideways in his seat, again, addressing the nearest passenger with a voice just loud enough to carry. I'm not trying to be rude, but if you can't afford to fly right, you shouldn't fake it. He shrugged as if the entire situation was inconvenient for him, as though Zara's presence was slowing down his travel plans, as though she were stealing a luxury someone like him had earned. You don't even know her name, Leah said sharply. She was still standing, hands by her sides, eyes fixed on Evelyn. And you don't get to decide who belongs up here. Evelyn looked Leah over. On impressed. Ma single quotes am. Sit down. This is a security matter now. No, Leah said. This is a bias matter. Fiona reappeared from the galley and spoke with unearned authority. She's been flagged as non-premium. Not on our list. Not on record. She was never scanned, Leah replied. You never gave her a chance. Zara didn't turn. She spoke softly into her phone again. Nina, note the statement. Flag as non-premium and indicate lack of digital verification. There's no tablet in use, no scanner, no confirmation process. Logged, Nina said. Forwarded to internal compliance. I'm also alerting corporate ethics. Evelyn, growing impatient, called toward the cockpit. Mark, get out here. First Officer Mark Jensen emerged with a frown, rubbing his temple like he'd been dragged into a mess that didn't interest him. He looked at Zara for 2 seconds, then turned to Evelyn. What's going on? She's claiming first-class boarding without verification. It's delaying departure, Evelyn said. Mark didn't ask for proof. He didn't even look at Zara. He simply nodded and said, Call security then. That one sentence opened the floodgates. Leah turned to the other passengers. Are we really going to sit here and watch this? She hasn't raised her voice. She hasn't moved from her seat. She hasn't done anything. Another passenger, an older black man near the back, nodded and said, I've seen this before. Different gate. Same game. Evelyn waved him off. Let's not turn this into something it is and single quotes T. It already is, Zara said. Martin jumped in again. She's probably with ground crew. Lost, confused. Zara tilted her head slightly and spoke into her phone. Nina. Include Martin Shaw's remarks under verbal misconduct. Log tone and content. Logged, Nina replied. Unshaken. Evelyn sighed loudly. You. People love making a scene. Mark stiffened. Even he recognized how badly that would read later. He glanced at Evelyn, then at Fiona, then finally at Zara. We don't have time for this. You already made time, Zara said. What you're wasting is your credibility. Leah had had enough. You're not going to throw her off this plane. We're not, Evelyn asked, turning slowly. Are you in charge now? Zara tapped her phone again. Nina. Proceed to 6C. Tell corporate to ready a compliance call back. Nina responded immediately. Message delivered. Internal ethics has been alerted. They're monitoring the situation now. Martin scoffed. Who is she even calling? Her cousin. No, Zara said. My executive assistant. Mark rubbed his eyes. Evelyn, this is escalating fast. You think, Leah snapped, because you're targeting someone for looking too ordinary in first class. Evelyn looked around the cabin. The energy had shifted, not in her favor. There were too many stares now, too many whispers, too many people noticing her certainty had no foundation, that her commands had no procedure, and that's when she snapped. She grabbed Zara's briefcase, again, this time from the floor where Martin had dropped it earlier, and tossed it toward the rear of the cabin. This, she said, is unclaimed junk. The cabin gasped, not from the motion, but from the word junk. Zara took a slow step forward. Her voice was still calm, still even. You just called my work junk. Evelyn. Evelyn shrugged. If you had real credentials, you wouldn't be standing here trying to prove them. You'd already be gone. Zara raised her phone once more. Nina. Escalate to final level. Notify all regional ops. We're proceeding with live compliance reporting. Leah turned again. What is that? What does that mean? It means, Zara said, they're about to find out who's really delaying this flight. And then came the medium twist. Another passenger, a younger, white man in a gray suit, stood up in row 3. She's right. I saw everything. The boarding pass was real. I watched Evelyn toss it. Evelyn paled slightly. That's not what happened. Yes, he said. Louder this time. It is. A third passenger raised her voice. She asked you to scan it. You didn't. You just dismissed her. Fiona tried to jump in. They're not staff. They don't understand the protocols. They understand enough, Zara said. They watched everything. Evelyn glared. This is insubordination. No, Zara replied. This is Starcrest Aviation, and you're destroying its name from the inside. She walked toward her briefcase, bent down, and picked it up herself. She returned to C to A without asking permission. Evelyn didn't move. Mark didn't speak. And in that moment, for the first time, the crew realized they were no longer in control. Then, prove it, Evelyn snapped. Prove you belong in first class. Prove you're not some assistant sneaking in behind her boss. The words came fast now, laced with something uglier than protocol, resentment, maybe even fear. Captain Evelyn Reed stood rigid near the galley wall, her voice cutting across the quiet cabin. You want to keep that seat, sweetheart. Then show us your net worth. A beat of silence followed. So complete it made the hum of the ventilation system feel like thunder. Zara Kala didn't blink. She remained seated, legs crossed, phone still resting against her ear. From the other end, Nina's voice came in steady. Still logging, Evelyn just demanded a personal wealth verification. Compliance escalation complete. I'm not showing you anything, Zara said softly, eyes locked on Evelyn, because I don't answer to small people with loud voices. Martin let out a theatrical laugh. She's a philosopher now. Terrific. He turned in his seat, waving his hand towards Zara like she was clutter. She doesn't even have a last name. You hear how vague she is. Just another coach flyer playing rich. Evelyn stepped forward. Jaw tight. That's it. I'm done playing games. Fiona, call security. Now. Fiona Bell didn't hesitate. Copy, on the call. She vanished behind the galley partition, already speaking into the phone. Moments later, the rear cabin door clicked open. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped in, eyes sweeping the passengers like they were suspects. Alex Stone, 36, Starcrest Aviation's in-house security lead, wore a dark tactical blazer with a nameplate over the chest. His voice was clipped, neutral, and cold. We've received a report of unauthorized boarding. Evelyn gestured with both hands. That's her, right there, seat to A, refusing to leave, non-compliant. Alex moved towards Zara with slow, measured steps. Ma'am, I'm going to need to see identification. Immediately, Zara didn't rise. You'll need to state the violation first. You've been flagged as unverified, Alex said, reaching for the tablet holstered at his belt. There's no record of any scan, Leah said, rising again from her seat. She had a valid pass, we all saw it. She's making this up, Martin said, chuckling under his breath. Next, she says she owns the plane. Another passenger, a black woman in her early 20s, stood up near the rear. She hadn't spoken until now. Her voice was small, but it carried. Why is it always people who look like us? Evelyn turned to her. Sit down, now. I just wanted to know, she said, because I didn't get scanned either. That was the moment Zara's eyes met hers. Maya, right, Zara said gently. Maya Jordan, the young woman nodded, clearly startled. You're a designer. Jewelry. You had a client meeting in Atlanta yesterday. Maya nodded again. How? How did you know that? I read your profile last week, Zara said, and I invited you on this flight. Maya blinked. You did? Zara turned back to Evelyn. Tell me again who's verified. Alex shifted slightly. Captain, we may need to pause, Evelyn barked. No, she's challenging flight command. That's a removal offense. Alex didn't respond right away. His eyes darted between Evelyn and Zara. Then he stepped closer to the seat. Ma'am, he said quietly, please remove your scarf and step into the aisle. Zara looked up at him, then slowly loosened the silk scarf around her neck. Alex reached for her elbow to guide her up. It wasn't violent, but it wasn't gentle either. Don't touch her, Leah shouted. Hands off, another passenger yelled. Alex paused. Dozens of eyes were now trained on him. Zara stood under her own power. Her voice never rose. Alex, you just crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. I'm following procedure, he said. No, Zara replied. You're following orders from someone who's already out of one. Evelyn stepped back, sensing the tide had turned, but Mark Jensen, the first officer, was already breaking. Enough, he said suddenly, loudly. Everyone stop. The cabin froze. Evelyn looked at him, confused. Mark, what are you doing? He exhaled. Shakily. We need to tell the truth. All of it. Evelyn's voice dropped. Mark, not now. Yes, now, he snapped. I'm not going down for this. He turned toward the passengers. Fiona pushed the security call without checking the manifest. Mark admitted there were no scans, no logs. Evelyn told her to flag the passenger as disruptive before we even took off. Evelyn's face went pale. I told her not to. Mark added, but she said this woman looked suspicious and that if she didn't belong, we'd find out fast. Leah gasped. You admitted that, out loud. Mark nodded slowly. I can't lie anymore. I won't. Evelyn lunged forward. That's not what happened. Zara raised a single hand. Let her speak, she said. Evelyn froze. Zara turned toward the aisle, back straight. Her scarf hung loosely from her hand now. Her voice didn't need volume. It had gravity. My name is Zara Khalid, she said, looking at Alex, then Mark, then Evelyn. And you've all made a mistake that will cost you dearly? Leah whispered. Wait, Khalid. Maya's eyes widened. You're that Zara Khalid? Martin chuckled nervously. She's bluffing. Mark shook his head. She's not. Zara took a single step forward. I own Starcrest Aviation. Every seat. Every engine. Every protocol. Evelyn. Mark. Fiona. Alex. I am your employer. And this flight isn't going anywhere until I say it does. Evelyn opened her mouth, then closed it. Alex slowly took a step back. Fiona disappeared into the galley again, and for the first time all night, Martin was silent. Passengers began murmuring, stunned, furious, relieved. A slow ripple of outrage filled the cabin. Leah sat down heavily, overwhelmed. She was right the whole time. Zara turned back to her seat, picked up her phone and said clearly, Nina, confirm authority. Nina's voice came through like steel. Confirmed. CEO Khalid. Full Starcrest Aviation Authority verified. We're with you. Evelyn's face flushed as Zara's declaration settled like thunder in the luxury cabin. No one spoke, but the silence wasn't empty. It was thick with exposure. Mark's confession still hung in the air, the final nail in the crew's credibility. Evelyn's jaw twitched, and then she doubled down. You think naming yourself changes anything? This plane runs on protocol. I'm still the captain of this flight. Zara didn't flinch. She didn't argue. She simply raised her phone again and said, Nina, move to Phase 3. Begin full verbal enforcement. Nina replied instantly. Authority acknowledged. Regional operations on standby. Evelyn scoffed. You don't give orders here. But the power had already shifted. Zara turned to the cabin and addressed the passengers directly. If any of you have experienced or witnessed misconduct on this flight, racial, verbal, or otherwise, speak now or remain silent under it. Leah stood first. You've been profiled and mocked in front of us, and I watched your boarding pass get ignored. The older black man in row 5 added, This isn't the first time I've seen something like this. It needs to stop. One by one. Voices joined. Evelyn raised her hand, trying to restore order. But it was too late. The passengers had become a chorus. Fiona returned from the galley, visibly flustered. Corporate can't override flight deck command, she stammered. You're causing disruption. Zara replied calmly, I'm correcting it. Then she looked past Fiona, her eyes landing on Maya Jordan, the young black designer now shifting nervously near the rear lavatory. Evelyn's voice cut through the noise again, sharp and sudden. We need this one identified. 2. She's not logged either. Maya froze. Excuse me. Evelyn stepped toward her. We're confirming all unauthorized boarders. You didn't scan either. Correct. Maya looked panicked. You never asked me to. I was told I was on the manifest. Told by who? Evelyn demanded. By someone who invited me, Maya said, voice trembling. Zara stepped between them. That would be me. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. So now you're handing out premium access like party favors. Zara didn't answer. She simply looked to Alex, who still stood, awkwardly near the cockpit wall. Alex, she said, are you going to allow this? Alex hesitated. Captain Reed is still technically. I'm invoking owner override. Zara said. Now. Alex looked frozen. He glanced at Mark, who stared at the floor. Then, with visible reluctance, Alex reached for his radio. Owner override initiated, he said. Jet grounded. Pending internal directive. Evelyn's face went white. You're making a mistake, she hissed. Zara turned toward her. You already did, without warning. Evelyn stepped forward, eyes wild. You don't belong in aviation, she snarled. You bought your way in. You don't understand what it means to run a flight. People like you. And that was the last line Evelyn would speak as captain, because before she could finish, Zara turned toward her fully and said, That's enough. Alex, escort her to the forward jump seat. She is relieved of command. Evelyn barked. Alex, don't you dare. But Alex was already moving. Captain, I'm going to need you to comply. This is illegal. Evelyn screamed. You're finished. No, Zara said coldly. You are. Evelyn resisted, stepping backward, but Alex blocked her path. She made one last attempt to take control, yelling to the passengers, "You're being misled. She's faking this." Leah stood. "We saw the badge. We heard the assistant. She owns this jet. You're just loud." Evelyn pointed at Leah, furious. "You're encouraging mutiny." But no one listened anymore. Fiona slumped into a side seat, avoiding eye contact. Mark sank into the galley, hands shaking, and Maya, still stunned, was approached by Zara, who said quietly, "You didn't deserve that. You're a guest, not a suspect." Maya nodded, swallowing tears. "Thank you." Then came the twist no one expected. Alex paused, then looked at Zara and said, "There's something you should know." The cabin went still. Alex lowered his voice. Before the acquisition, this crew ran their own audit system. Evelyn had Fiona mark certain names for scrutiny. Names that didn't look premium. It was never written down. But it happened, a lot. Zara stared at him. "Are you saying this wasn't the first time?" "No, Mum," Alex said. "And the reports were always blocked before reaching higher management." Evelyn controlled that channel. Zara turned toward Nina on her phone. "Nina, confirm. Do we have a history of blocked complaints from this aircraft ID?" Nina replied, "Yes, 15 cases flagged, all linked to Reed and Bell, filed by passengers but never processed. Most were dismissed verbally, then marked as resolved without action." The air turned heavy. Evelyn screamed from the front jump seat, "This is a setup." Zara didn't even look at her. "This is accountability," she said. "And it's long overdue." Passengers murmured again, this time not in confusion, but in shared clarity. What they had witnessed tonight wasn't just a mistake. It was a system exposed, a pattern broken open. Zara turned to Maya again and said, "You are never here by accident. You're here to see what justice looks like when someone refuses to stay quiet." Maya nodded slowly. Leah said, "What happens next?" Zara looked around the cabin, steady and composed. "Now," she said, "we clean house." Zara stood at the center of the cabin like a storm that had finally stilled. The tension hadn't vanished. It had crystallized, suspended in the air between the crew and the passengers. Slowly, deliberately, she reached into the side pocket of her briefcase and pulled out a slim leather folder. Inside was a single page, one that bore the embossed seal of Starcrest Ventures and her name in bold across the top. She stepped forward, held the document at eye level, and said in a voice clear enough to cut through steel, "My name is Zara Khalid. I am the founder and CEO of Starcrest Ventures. I own Starcrest Aviation in full. Every plane, every crew contract, every operational policy, including the one that empowers me to dismiss staff on the spot in cases of confirmed misconduct." She paused for one breath, one heartbeat, and then turned to face the people who had humiliated her. Evelyn Reed, Mark Jensen, Fiona Bell, Alex Stone, you are all terminated from Starcrest Aviation, effective immediately. Evelyn let out a strangled laugh. "You're bluffing." Zara handed the folder to Leah, who read it silently, then nodded and said, "It's real." Evelyn's smirk faltered. "You can't do this. There's a process." "There was a process," Zara interrupted. "You ignored it. You abused it. You falsified it. And then you weaponized it against the very people you were meant to serve. Your process ends today." Fiona stood frozen in the galley, mouth trembling. "I was just following orders." "That excuse doesn't work anymore," Zara said calmly. "You didn't just follow them, you carried them out with pride." Mark slumped into the jump seat. "I didn't want this to happen. I told Evelyn to stop." Zara looked at him. "Then why didn't you report her?" He didn't answer. She turned back to Evelyn. "You sabotaged my company from inside. You fed your bitterness into every flight, every interaction, every decision. And when you were challenged, you chose arrogance over accountability." Evelyn's jaw clenched. "You want me gone? Fine. But don't pretend you're perfect. I'm not, Zara said, but I am accountable. And I'm done letting people like you rot systems from the inside while calling it protocol. Martin tried to speak up again. I had nothing to do with this. Zara turned her gaze toward him like a closing door. Mr. Shaw, you verbally harassed me, touched my belongings, spread lies about my identity, and attempted to degrade another guest in front of a full cabin. Your presence on any Starcrest aircraft is banned for life, and your firm will be notified. Martin stood slowly, holding his hands up in mock surrender. I walk. No problem. I don't fly with amateurs anyway. You fly with cowards, Leah said, not looking at him. As Martin moved to leave, the remaining passengers murmured, none of them looking away, and then the huge twist began to surface. Zara turned to Fiona. Is there anything else you'd like to share before you go? Fiona hesitated. Her face crumpled slightly, and then she blurted out, there were more. The cabin hushed again. More what? Zara asked. Fiona looked down. More complaints. At least 15. Evelyn told me to log them verbally, then delete the entries. Passengers who didn't look. Premium. She said they were trying to game the system. And Mark. He knew. All I shifted to Mark. He didn't deny it. He just closed his eyes. I didn't think anyone would listen. But you heard them, Zara said, and you stayed quiet. She turned back to Fiona, and you concealed them. Fiona nodded slowly. I did. I'm sorry? Zara stared at her. Do you understand what that means? What it cost? Yes, Fiona said. Too late. Zara replied. You don't get to rewrite it now. She turned toward Nina, still on the phone. Confirm Fiona Bell's direct involvement in complaint suppression. Nina's voice came through steady. Confirmed. All complaint metadata logged through flight ID A783, matches crew signature and security chain, and the suppression protocol, Zara asked, linked directly to crew access, not company policy. Nina said, corporate compliance ready to receive verbal testimony. Proceed. Zara replied, send summaries to internal audit, full logs, no redactions. Nina confirmed. Moving now. Zara walked back to the center of the aisle, facing the remaining passengers. To everyone who watched this unfold, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that this happened at all. I created Starcrest Aviation to be a different kind of service. One built on dignity, access, and respect. And tonight, that vision was betrayed by the very people entrusted to protect it. Leah rose again, voice steadier now. But you also stood your ground. That mattered. The older black man in row 5 nodded. You cleaned house without raising your voice. That mattered more. Maya whispered. You turned this flight into a reckoning. Zara looked at her. And that's only the beginning. Then she walked toward the cockpit door, not to fly, not to escape, but to take ownership, fully and openly, of what had almost been stolen from her. The system, the brand, the standard, and she would rebuild it all, this time with her eyes wide open, with the crew dismissed and the cabin silent. Zara returned to her seat, but not to rest. There was still work to do, real work. She raised her phone and spoke calmly. Nina, we're initiating the Starcrest Equity Program now, full scope. I want it announced to every active aircraft by sunrise. Nina didn't pause. Drafting internal bulletin, headline, Equity begins with eyes open. Zara nodded slightly, then stood and addressed the passengers. Tonight is not the end. Tonight is the beginning. Starcrest Aviation will undergo immediate reform. Every crew member, on every route, will complete mandatory equity training. Passenger interaction logs will now be subject to verbal audits by regional directors, and any flag behavior of any kind will be reviewed by an independent ethics panel. No exceptions. The passengers began to murmur again, not in shock, but in support. Leah spoke up from her seat. That's the airline I want to fly with. A few others clapped softly, followed by a ripple of quiet nods. Zara continued. We will also launch an anonymous reporting line for passengers and employees alike. Retaliation will not be tolerated, and for those who feel overlooked, unheard, or invisible, we hear you now. She turned back toward the cockpit and added, "This aircraft will remain grounded until a new crew is dispatched. Every protocol going forward will operate with oversight from my executive office." Nina's voice returned in her earpiece. "Compliance teams are aligning with HR. Evelyn's historical behavior pattern has been corroborated with internal review. We're scanning Mark's personnel file next." Zara said, "If you find any reference to concealed audits, flag it red. I want all of it exposed." But then came the massive twist. Another voice entered the conversation, one Zara hadn't heard all evening. Alex, the recently dismissed security lead, stepped into the aisle slowly, hands raised to show he meant no harm. "Miss Khalid," he began, "I know I'm out, and I accept that, but I need to be honest about something else. Something worse." Zara didn't interrupt. She motioned for him to speak. "Fiona and we were supposed to report on audit compliance to regional ops." Alex said. "She told me she was doing it. I believed her, but earlier this month, I saw her editing crew files manually, removing bias flags from reports that came in anonymously. I confronted her. She told me Evelyn asked her to sanitize the logs so Starcrest wouldn't look politically soft to charter clients. I didn't report it. I should have, and I'm sorry." The cabin went dead still. Leah looked stunned. Maya was shaking her head. Zara stared at Alex, not with rage, but with a silence so sharp it seemed to burn. "You let her alter the record," she said. "You allowed deliberate erasure of passenger experiences." "I did," Alex said quietly, "because I thought keeping internal peace was better than shaking the tree. But tonight, you reminded me that silence is part of the problem." Nina's voice came through Zara's earpiece again. "Confirmed. We just found 4 files with digital fingerprints matching Fiona's admin ID, all listed under suppressed flags. She removed incident tags from 3 minority passenger cases. The files were marked, resolved, no bias. That's code we've never approved." Zara stood taller. "Prepare a full forensic review if any passengers were denied follow-up. I want outreach initiated, public apology, refunds, everything." "Understood," Nina said. "Audit team is mobilizing." Zara turned back to the passengers. "This is what change looks like. Not just statements, not just slogans. Systems." Leah stood again. "You said people like us deserve to be seen, heard, protected. You meant it?" Zara nodded. "Because I've been the girl at the gate they tried to push aside. And I've been the woman in the boardroom they tried to ignore. And I've been the owner they never imagined was watching. And now, I'm building the kind of company I needed when I was all 3. The cabin exhaled, the tension replaced by something steadier. "Trust," one woman whispered to her seatmate. "She's not just flying the plane, she's fixing the runway." Alex lowered his gaze and turned to leave, but Zara stopped him. "Alex," he looked up. "I don't forgive what you did, but I recognize what you just gave. You told the truth when you didn't have to. Let that be your start." Alex nodded. "Thank you." And with that, the door to the past finally closed. The new era of Starcrest aviation had begun, with real accountability, real reform, and no more shadows. The sun was just beginning to rise over Chicago when the final decisions were made. FAA officials, alerted through Starcrest's Emergency Ethics Division, opened formal inquiries into Evelyn, Mark, Fiona, and Alex. Their security clearances were revoked, flight certifications suspended, and digital flight records sealed pending review. Martin Shaw's firm, already under light scrutiny for other internal misconduct, faced immediate audits tied to his onboard behavior and known prior complaints. Nina updated Zara over the phone as passengers quietly prepared to disembark. "Martin's name has been pulled from 3 pending corporate contracts," she said, "and his investor group just issued a distancing statement. His reputation's cracking." Zara didn't smile. It's not about breaking reputations, she said. It's about rebuilding standards. Nina replied. Well, you're doing both. A passenger across the aisle turned to Zara and said softly, You changed something tonight. You didn't just stop the injustice, you reset the whole culture. Zara turned to her with a nod. We all did. It took every voice in this cabin. Then she stood once more and addressed the remaining passengers. The crew is gone. The damage they did will be undone. But your presence here wasn't wasted. You witnessed truth. And because of that, Starcrest Aviation has been reborn. A quiet round of applause followed. Gentle, grounded, not in celebration, but in affirmation. It was Leah who spoke. Next, her voice steady but emotional. What happens now? Zara replied. We build the structure we always needed. We create space for everyone who's ever been treated like excess baggage in a seat they earned. This won't be performative, it will be permanent. Nina's voice returned. Legacy draft is ready. The Starcrest Equity Program will include annual live audits, random bias drills, and rotating passenger advisory panels. We've also added protections for guests flagged unfairly. Zara nodded. Add one more piece. For every documented case of mistreatment over the past 5 years, offer a direct apology and a voucher to return. Let fairness carry interest. Maya, still seated near the rear, looked stunned. You do that? Zara looked her way. Maya, the whole system failed you before you even stepped on board. You were profiled. In silence. That's going to end, and not with a coupon, but with a conversation. And a flight that reminds you of your value. Maya's voice cracked. Then let this be the start. Zara stepped down the aisle and offered her a hand. Let's rewrite what it means to fly. Maya took it. No fanfare, just dignity. And then came the final twist. One whispered, almost lost in the shuffle. A retired pilot near the back of the cabin stood slowly. He looked weathered, but proud, his cap still tucked under one arm. Miss Khalid, he said. I trained Mark Jensen 15 years ago. Back then, we logged every incident by hand. I remember 2 of his logs getting edited post-flight. I never proved it, but I always suspected. When I raised concern, I was told to let it go. Zara turned to him gently. What did you see? The man looked her in the eye. Not just cover-ups, a pattern. And it always involved young, black travelers, being questioned harder, treated differently, denied without cause. He paused. It wasn't just Evelyn. Mark protected her for years. Zara nodded, not in shock, but in confirmation. Thank you for saying it out loud. Nina's voice returned. We flagged Mark permanently. He won't touch another cockpit again. Zara exhaled, then turned to the cabin one last time. Humanity has to be louder than habit. That's the rule now. In 2026, Starcrest Aviation flew with a new soul. Gone were the performative policies and vague mission statements. In their place, real-time accountability, real leadership presence, and a rotating team of equity monitors who flew anonymously and reported truthfully. Crew diversity increased by 48%, and passenger satisfaction surpassed every prior year on record. Guests like Maya flew often and proudly. And in every terminal where a Starcrest jet waited, there was a plaque that read, Justice is not policy, it's practice. As for Zara Khalid, she never made another undercover flight. She didn't need to, because the systems she built were built to stand without her, and that was the point. In the end, legacy wasn't about the moment she fired the crew. It was about the culture she rewrote after they were gone. The passengers didn't just get a flight, they got a future. And the skies, they got a little more fair. If this story moved you, don't just scroll past, leave a comment. Let us know where you're watching from, and share your own moment of quiet power. Tap like if you believe dignity should never be questioned. And hit subscribe, because we've got more stories that speak truth without needing to shout.